Hello everyone. In this video we're going to take a look at the TinHifi C3. I've actually been wanting to get this out for like a week now, but this one's been kind of a pain. I'll get into that later. First, let's go over the specs, what you get in the box. It's just a plain white box, C3 on the top. Let's see if I have it. I should have it nearby. Apologize. As you can see, it's just a C3 on the top. You get a bag of terrible tips, which I don't seem to have by my side at the... yes I do have them. Alright, let's see. Got a little bag of terrible tips. I think 12. I think there's, what is it, 6 pair in there. They all seem to be the same type, so I'm not sure why they give you 6 pair. It almost seems like you just got 2 of the same ones. So I don't know. I wasn't a fan. That seemed to kind of not do good things to their sound. Get that. So you get those. You get the cable, which the cable I actually really do like. It's a very nice cable, if you can see that. It's that fake silver plated like every other TinHifi IEM, but it has good hardware and I like the way it looks. It's also has a very low impedance, which makes it great for some of the planar IEMs if you plan to run them single-ended. Anything 8, 16 ohms, great cable for that type of stuff. Now, for the IEMs themselves, you kind of got something very familiar here. You should be able to see that. Let's see, I'll pull one out. You have that TinHifi logo. If you can make that out. It looks more gold on my screen here, but it's actually more silver. And then you also have the carbon fiber. It is, I guess that's a 3D printed plastic with a resin coating, much like the original T3 Plus. And let's see, sorry about the big hand in the way. Let's see if I can get this out. I've been using the C3 with these tri-tips. I've really enjoyed them. They've done a lot of good for the sound, and that's basically how I'm going to review them with these tips, because with the stock tips, I found that they're aggressive like this, but with the stock tips, they're very aggressive to the point where, for me, it was getting fatiguing. Now, I always thought I was more sensitive to others in that regard, but it's possible that's not true, because I love the EA 500, and I do know there's some people that say it sounds a little too aggressive at times, and granted, it does sound more analytical. I don't ever find it fatiguing in any way, whereas this can get fatiguing, even though it's nowhere near as cool sounding or as analytical sounding as the A500. It actually has a lot in common with the T3 Plus. So since we got this here, I'll break out the T3 Plus right here. As you can see, as far as the shape and everything, they're virtually identical. The only difference would be a vent on the T3 Plus that is not on the C3. This nozzle here, it's a metal nozzle on the T3 Plus, and it's plastic and part of the shell on the C3. It's also slightly longer on the T3 Plus. I don't know how much that impacts the sound, but it's something to know. What does probably impact the sound is the filter. And again, that lack of, I don't know if you can even see that. If you can see there's no hole there. There's nothing there, whereas there is a vent. If I can get it right. There it is. You should be able to see it. There is a vent on the back. The T3 Plus has that back vent, but right above the driver it also has that vent right there with a filter. Now, in the nozzle though, the C3 has that white filter with the little hole right in the center. It's on both of them, so it's not a defect or anything. Whereas the T3 Plus does not. It's just the wire mesh filter there. So they kind of copied the same old. They're both very comfortable. I haven't had any issues wearing either of them for extended periods of time. And trying to do this review, I've worn both of them for hours and hours and hours, day after day, trying to find a substantial difference, because it was getting weird. I'll get into that later, but let's just say there are times where they sound very similar. I discussed the cable. So, alright. What else? Anything else different? No, that should be about it. I guess outside of the specs, I can show you the specs real quick. Single driver, 32 ohm, just like the T3 Plus. And that max power rating might actually mean something with these. I do think there was a case when I was running it balanced, and I might have been driving it too hard. It was only the left driver, but it actually sounded like it was bottoming out. I don't know how else to explain it, but it did sound like, and I might have been going a little too much with the volume and with the impressive bass and the amount of bass. It just seemed like it was getting to be too much for that left side to handle, and it was weird. You could hear it. First thought it was a song, so I listened to the same thing with the T3 Plus, and I didn't experience it. Now, there is listening to more songs, spending more time with it, and being able to quickly A and B. I was able to find some differences. And in summary, right from the beginning, I would describe the C3 basically has the T3 Plus, except built for excitement. Like, you kind of sacrificed a few things here and there, but gave you a much more dynamic, engaging, energetic listening experience. Like, the bass is quicker and tighter on the C3, arguably more detailed. It's certainly in the sub-bass region anyway. It's certainly more elevated. You definitely feel the rumble of stuff more. Like, especially when you start listening to hip hop and like stuff like Pop Smoke, that's just all this deep sub-bass. It's really tactile and textured on the C2. It's tactile and textured on the T3 Plus as well, but the C3 here seems like it's just quicker, slightly more detailed, definitely snappier. As far as the mid-range goes, it's where another difference kind of happens. There's definitely a boost in the upper mid-range on the C3 compared to the T3 Plus. And with the stock tips, it was getting fatiguing for me. These things they're a very energetic pair of IEMs. I would compare them to, man, what could I compare it to? What do I have that they're kind of similar to? I don't know if I have anything that's kind of like these, to be honest. I'm sure I do, and I'm not thinking of it at the moment, but it's more, I wrote a whole entire review trying to keep this video short, and I've already gone off the chain. Okay, so let's see if I can get back on the rails here. Like, these, slightly more elevated bass, quicker, tighter, more dynamic. Not I guess slightly better quality, but there's not a huge difference between that and the T3. The mids, again, this is an elevated upper mid-range. Stock tips, it can get a little fatiguing. However, I put the same tips on both, as you can see. And this is still a more elevated upper mid-range. So the vocalist is definitely more forward than it is on the T3 Plus. The C3 kind of brings them front and center, but there's a weird abnormality, I guess it would be, whereas instead of being directly front and center, a lot of vocals I find being front center but also elevated, like in position, like instead of being level with all the other instruments and having instruments move around you, it's sitting higher up in the space, so it's kind of up near your forehead and whatnot. It's up a little higher, whereas the instruments are lower, kind of shoulder width, or ear height. You still get other instruments that'll happen higher up, lower down. That is another impressive area given the price of the C3. It's not as wide as the T3 Plus, but it does have good elevation, good layering. It's an impressively detailed IEM for the price. And I believe I didn't even mention that yet, so I'll do that now. I paid $35 for these from the Easy Ear store on Amazon. I believe the normal price is $49.99. The T3 Plus is normally, I guess, what, $69.99. It used to be on sale all the time. I paid, I think, $45, maybe $50, somewhere around that for my pair. So there's basically a $15 to $20 price gap between the two, and you can almost sense it in the sound. It's not like this is lower quality sound. It's almost like it's tuned for a it's tuned for a cheaper target, for a cheaper price, for I don't know. It's almost like they tuned it that way, not to take away from the T3 Plus, just to give something with more limited use cases than the T3 Plus, because the T3 Plus, in my opinion, is a great all-rounder. I thoroughly enjoy it. I know currently, though, the EA 500 is kind of my go-to, especially recommendation for the T3 Plus's price point. But before the EA 500, it was the T3 Plus every time. I actually preferred it over the Alina. And I don't know about the Alina SC. I do think they're more comparable. But the original Alina, I definitely preferred this. It's definitely a quality driver. It has good detail. It's just, I can definitely see people finding this potentially too aggressive. It's a very energetic listen. You're gonna have the vocals right there in your front. The bass is gonna, especially sub bass. Sub bass seems to be where the emphasis is at. When sub bass gets going, it's big and powerful, impactful. It does, as far as like the mid bass and the punchiness of the bass. It's a little tighter than the T3 Plus, but roughly the same. The same quality, the same punchiness, very, very close. It's really that mid-range that separates the two. As far as once you get into the treble range, they kind of balance out and become identical again. It's that I almost wish they didn't elevate the mid-range that much, because this could have been a cheaper, kind of better packaged T3 Plus, because you don't need the case, the cable. The OEM cable for the T3 Plus has failed on me. I've already had to go aftermarket. Because of the aftermarket cable, now these two pins right here, or these two holes right there, are slightly widened out, so I can't even use a lot of stock cables anymore. So I'm trying to avoid that with this, and like I said before, the stock cable for this is great. So I really have no use to use any third-party cables outside of when I want to listen to balanced. And that's another area that the C3 Plus kind of shines. It's like once you go balanced, it even becomes slightly more refined. Everything opens up because the sound stage is definitely more narrow than the T3 Plus. I would kind of, it's really not that impressive. I would say it's acceptable, but certainly not its strong point. It's not the T3 Plus a strong point either, but in comparison, it's definitely a more wider, more expansive, relaxing, not musical. It really isn't, because they're musical in their own way, but it's more expansive. It's almost like a more refined sound on the T3 Plus, and this is a more fun sound. It's close to you, it's intense, but it's quality. There is a hint of graininess though. Like some would argue, and it's true. Like for instance, going from the T3 Plus to something better, you might start hearing the graininess in the T3 Plus when you go back to this. It's kind of like that with this. You get it a little bit, but again, it's only with some tracks, and I don't know if it's a result of that elevated upper mid-range or it's a result of an inferior driver. Just one not as good as what's in the T3 Plus. That I do not know. What I do know is, as far as materials, the drivers are supposed to be similar, but I suspect the C3 probably uses the same driver as the C2. Like, I know the C2 was said to be nicely detailed and everything for the price, and I just think this is probably a better tuned version of it. I don't know. I haven't had much time at all with the C2, so I can't really comment too much. I just know from the short time I had with the C2, I'm more of a fan of this than that. That's just not really my taste. It's a little grating to me. But if you can get this one for $35, ever since the T3 Plus became popular, I haven't seen it as cheap as what I got it for, except for like those special Linsol sales or whatever. So if you can get this at $35, I would just think overall, just because it's half the price, get the C3 over the T3 Plus. But when they're so close in price with the MSRP, it's kind of, what do you prefer? Do you want to have more fun with your music and you'd willing to sacrifice a little soundstage? You want a better cable? Get the C3. You want a more well-rounded, smoother, I guess relaxing. It's only relaxing in comparison though, because I wouldn't describe it as overly veiled or anything like that, or boring, because it's not. But in comparison, this is just a more refined sound. So if you want that, sure. But if you want fun and the savings, yeah, the C3 is actually a good buy. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I would even argue it's better than at least the KZ PR2 that I got. I'm still trying to figure stuff out with that one, because I don't know, all the reviews seem to praise it, and obviously the one I got is a newer revision. It doesn't have the black mesh, and I can't find anything enjoyable about it. It's painful. The bass isn't impressive compared to any of the other planers I had. The fit, I don't like the fit. I don't like the feel. It comes with a crap cable, crap tips. Like, there's so much for that $50 I don't like. And if compared to this new version of the PR2, that KZ PR2 planner, I would certainly get the C3 over, because they're both kind of intense, but this is intense in a fun way. It can get fatiguing, but with these tips, it doesn't get fatiguing to me. Like there's no sibilance, nothing like that. It's just everything has a lot of energy, a lot of punch until you start getting to the treble. So I can still see, just like the T3 Plus, I know there were some people who complained didn't have enough treble extension, stuff like that. If you're one of those people, you'll still kind of feel the same way about the C3, but I don't notice it to be any worse than anything else outside of stuff way more expensive. I mean, and then the $100 planers, like, of course, they're better, but as far as that treble extension and everything, EA500 seems like it has better treble extension. Maybe the OH2 that I have has better treble extension, but it's right in line with the True Theory Zero. Shit, what else do I have? You know what? I just caught it out the corner of my eye. This is almost like the opposite of a Melee. Melee's warm, smooth, laid back. This is kind of a little bright-ish, aggressive, and energetic. And that's kind of the summary of the C3. I'm saying the same thing over and over, so I don't really know how to explain it any better than that at this point. I'm pretty sure I've gone over everything. If you guys have any questions, anything else you'd like me to discuss, I'd sure appreciate the interaction in the comments. If you don't mind, leave a like, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to leave it there. The C3, it's an overlooked budget IM that I would certainly recommend for people who like the T3 but just want something a little more engaging, a little more risky. There's detail here, there's bass here, and rewind. Stuff like Korn. I generally don't listen to too much heavy metal, but stuff like Korn sounds amazing. That's another. I am so glad I stopped because I'm about to skip over the most important part, and it has to do with those elevated mids. Vocals, voices, all that stuff sounds more natural on the T3 Plus. Something about the C3 will highlight just bad recordings. It'll make a bad recording worse. If the vocals were recorded in a weird booth with echo, you'll hear it more with this. But guitars and other stringed instruments sound amazing on these. Like, I was shocked how much texture and crispness, hearing a guitar string plucked, it sounds like a vibrating string of metal. It was very impressive for the price. It's very enjoyable. So if you I don't know if I've heard Korn sound that good for $35. I don't even listen to it that much. Haven't listened to it in years. But I found myself just going through my catalog of Korn albums, enjoying it with this. It was so much fun. Alright, that's it. That's string instruments, stuff like that. If you like that, the C3 will also be good for you. Again, maybe eventually I'll try to do this a little more professional when I have more time, but for now, I hope people don't overlook this C3. It's better than what I think some people are saying. It's certainly comparable to that. Oh, the EW200. I did just get that in, and I honestly would. That was 40. I think I paid like 44 after tax, or 42, something like that after tax, but everybody was making it seem like that was some super technical resolving powerhouse for this budget price. And I don't know, yeah, it's very clean, crisp, kind of analytical. It's definitely focused on that analytical sound. Everything is, it's like a cold, kind of has a coldness to it. It's lacking the fun that this has, but when you really listen, The details are rather similar between the C3 and the EW200, the SimGuy EW200. Very similar. And both, again, I don't find to be on par with the EA500. Anyway, that's for another video. Again, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment. I would like some interaction, see what you guys feel, see what you guys think about this comparison, your experience with the product. And thank you for watching. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.